Stop! Have you ever felt like your past is holding you back from the loving relationship you truly deserve? If so, you're in for a life-changing journey. Welcome to Eternelle Amor. I want you to imagine rewriting the script of your childhood to create a brighter future in your relationships. It's like having a magic wand that can transform your love life. But here's the secret sauce. The incredible Jordan Peterson is here to be your personal transformation coach. He's going to take you on an enlightening journey where you'll discover how to heal childhood trauma, which will unlock the door to a happier, healthier relationship. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand the profound impact of healing your past, but also gain actionable insights to help you build the loving, fulfilling relationships you'll always crave. So don't go anywhere, because this video is your ticket to a brighter, love-infused future. Let's dive right in.
We're bad at reading our own minds, for that matter. No, I thought I was the only person this had ever happened to. It's like, no, it's a universal human experience to one degree or another. Now, I'm not saying everyone was sexually abused, and I'm certainly not saying that some people aren't sexually abused to a degree that's so extreme it's unimaginable, where there are others, get off relatively lightly. But it's still, it's well within the realm of normative human experience that sex goes wrong in some way. At least you regret something that's happened, something you've done or something that was done to you. So putting it into, when you're the only person that something has happened to, that's really not good, right? Because it alienates you even from yourself. You have no idea what to do with that. And so that's sometimes why people find it such a relief to have their illness diagnosed. It's like, oh, this is known. There's a category. Other people have had this experience. Maybe there's a pathway through it. So just knowing that you're not the only person like that can be very helpful. Okay, well, one thing to realize when you're 25 and you were abused when you're 5 is that you're not 5 anymore, right? That the person to whom that happened is no longer there. You're there, but so, you might feel afraid of relationships. You might feel afraid of all sorts of things, but a lot of that was, you're sort of feeling that like that residual 5-year-old. I tell a story about one client I had. She was abused by her older brother, and she told me the story, and I drew a picture in my head while she was, I kind of pictured her at 5 and this hulking teenager, taking advantage of her. But as she told the story, I realized that her older brother was only 2 years older than her. Well, he was 7. It was like, okay, well, she wasn't the victim of a tyrannical male in some sense. They were 2 badly supervised children. Now, that doesn't mean that what he did was right, but she was still the 5-year-old in the memory, but she was 27 when she came to see me. And so the first thing I did was just point that out. It's like, think about the 7-year-olds right? For a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old is an adult, but for an adult, a 7 and a 5-year-old are clearly both children. Well, that just changed things somewhat. It made her feel less vulnerable in the moment. What your brain wants from you in relationship to a traumatic memory is indication that you're no longer vulnerable to the same problem. That's what memory is for, right? You remember something bad and you process it so that you change your interpretation or your behavior or the situation or whatever you can change so that it isn't going to happen in the future. And if you do that thoroughly, you'll generally let yourself rest. Right. You make sense of your past behavior so that the good things that happen to you can be duplicated and the bad things can be avoided. It's not to make an objective record of the world. It's to make a functional map of the world that you can apply to the future. And so I would say, one of the things you need to develop if you've had an experience like the one you had, perhaps, because I don't know the details, you probably need a theory of malevolence. You need an explanation. It's like, how could a person do that? Well, you have to have then you need a philosophy of bad. You need a philosophy of evil. you have to understand it so that you're no longer a victim of it. Because otherwise you can't put the event in a context.
Right.
And sometimes that means the development of a real philosophical sophistication. And that can help, because then you can start to separate out malevolence from benevolence, because maybe you're afraid of any intimate relationship now because it's been contaminated with that. And everything's fuzzy and foggy. And so you need to understand the person who did that, at least to some degree, so that you can separate that person out from all the other people around you that you encounter in situations that might be reminiscent of it. So you felt vulnerable, perhaps you felt ashamed. What do you think, when you're ashamed, what elicits that? What are the eliciting cues? Write it out. But if it's an old memory and it still bothers you, it means that you haven't decomposed that experience sufficiently to detach it from the emotion. So imagine when something terrible happens to you, you don't understand it, because doesn't terrible mean that you understand it? And the answer is, well, you understand things in stages. And the first way you understand a terrible thing is by freezing in terror or running. That's the understanding. It's not conceptual, it's embodied and emotional. And so event terror, that's the first category. Okay, now the next question is, how do you get it out? How do you get out of the terror? Well, you realize that nothing truly dangerous is happening. Well, what if something truly dangerous did happen? Then you elaborate your view of the world to the point where you're no longer vulnerable to that terrible thing. And that's extremely difficult. So the memory of something terrible stays terrible until you effortfully process it and decompose it often into a much more sophisticated map of the world. And it's really hard to do that.